Perfect. I think we'll get going then. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming and joining us on this webinar today. My name's Darragh Whelan. I'm one of the co-founders of Output Sports. And I'm delighted to see so many registrants and so many people attending this webinar. I think it shows great desire and a great interest in integrating technology into the Leaving Cert PE and ensuring that students at all levels as well are getting the feedback they require to improve at that. So with Output, I'm very briefly going to touch on ourselves, and then I'm going to introduce Tom, who's the main draw I'm completely aware of today with it as well. So with Output, what we've done is we've created a really simple to use system that allows elite sports science and analysis to be really simple and available to a much wider market than ever previously possible. So we've seen our tech being used at all levels of sport, from All-Ireland hurling champions to Premier League teams, to universities, to the NBA. But I think most pertinently for today, in a large number of schools as well. And that's both on the side of PE teaching and integrating it into that, to general well-being, to improving athletes across sports teams in either GAA or hockey or rugby or netball across lots of different schools as well. And all of this is done through the use of just a very small single wearable sensor and a camera phone as well. And I'm going to show you the technology after we have heard from Tom as well, because I think it'll integrate well with on that process with it. So just with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Tom Comyns. We're delighted that he's able to get up this time and talk through technology in that environment with it. So Tom is a senior lecturer in the University of Limerick. He has a BA in physical education from UL, as well as an MSc in the area of motor skill acquisition and a PhD in strength training for rugby units. So he teaches on the BSc courses in both physical education and exercise science, and he has extensive experience on the delivery of PE to free service providers as well. So in terms of his research interests, Tom's main focus is in the area of strength and conditioning, injury surveillance, fundamental movement skills, and approaches to teaching and health performance related fitness. Tom's also a practicing strength coach and has worked for years in the Irish national rugby team, Munster Rugby, and the Institute of Sport. And he currently trains some of Ireland's best athletes, including Tom Barr and Irish hockey Olympians. Tom's also a really good athlete as well on top of all of that. He competed in the Sydney Olympics and actually still holds a record for the Irish 4x100 relay record from 2000. And ever since we've met Tom a couple of years back, as we've transitioned from a university spin out into a company, he's been a really good friend to us here at Output, providing really good advice on everything from our scientific validity to usability and functionality of the system. We thought with all of that in mind, he's perfectly positioned to talk about the use of Output and also around integrating technology in Leaving Cert PE courses. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Tom. He'll take you through his talk, and then I will also show you the technology at the end of that talk.
So thanks very much, Darragh. And I'm delighted to be here and to talk about technology in the PE curricula and on Output Sports. So I'm just going to share my screen first. Give me one moment. Okay. And start from the start. Okay, so that should be it. We should be all be able to see it, and it'll be about 20 or 25 minutes, and we can have any questions at the end. And just looking at, I suppose, my experience of using technology, and in particular around Output Sports. So the focus really of today, I touch on other PE curricula, but the focus really is on the LCPE and sports technology and its use and reasons why you might use it with the LCPE. Kind of four really sections to it. First, talk about technology and the LCPE and why it is important, and particularly because I suppose this is where we use Output the most, or any technology, is in health-related fitness and performance-related fitness, and the testing and assessment of these components of fitness. Within that, we'll have a brief chat about principles of effective assessment and how technology such as Output Sports can be used with these components. Then I'll work through two examples of LCPE learning outcomes, learning activities that incorporate technology, and how a system like Output could be used to address learning outcomes. And a brief nod at the end just to the other curricular areas within PE and how output could be of value and technology to those areas. So firstly, why do we use technology with teaching the Leaving Cert PE? I suppose there's a host of different technological systems that are out there within PE or sport and exercise science settings. What I'm showing you here is some equipment that I would have access to here teaching on a PE teacher education program. But these are, if you want to term them, field-based technologies. They can be taken into the classroom, out on the pitch, into the gym, into the weights room. They're out of the lab. And because of that, they have usability, their user friendliness is improved, and they can be used in a quick and effective manner within a PE classroom setting. So a piece of equipment that we have, this is what's known as the linear positional transducer. It measures barbell velocity, which is related to muscular strength. This piece of kit is an OptiJump device. Basically, you have light emitting diodes going over and back between the receiver and transmitter. You can measure jump height in the jump. It can measure stride length. It can measure ground contact time. These are timing gates for measuring speed. This is a GPS watch, giving us the distance we've ran, the speed we've ran, and so on, and a number of steps. And then you have a system like Output, an IMU device, which can measure a lot of the metrics that all of these measure, but in one place, in one stop shop, essentially. And we would use them on our PEAK program, but I suppose they have applicability because they're field-based. And if just give an example like a VO2 max test, if you do a VO2 max test, the most accurate way of doing it to measure your cardiorespiratory endurance is going to a lab, but it's time consuming. To do 30 students, it'll probably take you 30 hours and cost a substantial amount of money. And the alternative is the bleep test. And the bleep test is the field-based test, which can give us an estimate of VO2 max. And the same way as these are field-based tests. And I'll chat a bit more about those later on around the accuracy of the data. Just before we move on, just my experience of Output, I've used it for a number of years since I first met Dara and Martin, maybe back at maybe 3 or 4 years ago at a conference. And I've used it with the athletes that I work with. So I work with a number of Olympic athletes just back from Tokyo, and I've used it with them. But I also use it within the module that I focus on here in UL, which is the pedagogy of health-related and performance-related fitness. So why use technology when teaching the LCPE? Well, according to the spec for the LCPE, the senior cycle has an emphasis on learners taking responsibility for their own learning and the acquisition of key skills. Now, technology can help here because it's the students who will be using this app. It's the students who will be interacting with platforms. So many of these technologies, such as Output Sports, all the data is stored onto an online platform, and they'll be able to take control over that themselves as well and have access to it and to see it. And that, I suppose, ticks the box with regard to this aspect of the senior cycle emphasis. Also in the LCPE specification, it states that the provision of high quality education experience in senior cycle is supported by teaching and learning opportunities that motivate and interest learners, that enable them to progress, deepen and apply their learning. So once we give our students a phone, an app, something that they're interacting with on a daily basis, you're probably going to increase their motivation, their interest, their engagement. You're showing that you're using cutting edge technology, and that will make the learning more meaningful and relatable to them. And because of that, we're probably ticking the box with regard to this aspect from the LCPE. And also, all of these technologies, like Output Sports, they're all focused on applying theoretical knowledge to the real life practical setting. And then again, you're touching on improving their ability to progress, deepen, and apply their learning. In addition to that, technology can be used to assist learners to apply knowledge and understanding about physical activity to inform how they prepare for, participate, and perform in PA. And that's again from the specification. So when our students interact with something like Output Sports and then the information you get back for them, it helps to direct them with regard to setting goals, in setting their own performance programs, their own physical activity programs, and it gives them information to prepare for, participate, and perform in physical activity. So it gives them the tools able to do this. And again, we're ticking the box again with technology around this aspect of the LCPE. And finally, the aim of the LCPE is to develop the learner's capacity to become informed, skilled, self-directed, and reflective performer in physical education and physical activity. And without a doubt, technology can tick all the boxes here. because they're going to become skilled on using technology, on doing the assessments, for example, of their health-related fitness through the technology, becoming informed. From that, they can interact with the data, self-direct their own programs. They can monitor their progress over time using technology, and this will help their reflective aspect. So, we're helping to address the aim of the LCPE through the use of technology such as output sports. Just one or two, I suppose, researchy bits on it as well. Using technology allows for an effective environment. In particular, if we look around fitness testing, it makes it efficient and effective, and done in a timely manner, which is, and be able to, cover our 30 students probably within a double PE class. And this is vitally important in order for things to run smoothly and to be doable in a real life setting. Research noted by Posner in 2004 noted the use of technology allows the preparation, admin, interpretation, and reporting of fitness testing in PE settings to be more effective. So we know that's the case. It's also user friendliness of these technologies is probably really good, and because of that, it lets things run more smoothly, efficiently, and effectively in a PE setting. This is, a real important aspect: student engagement and motivation. So we're engaging with the app, with the technology. It's something new for them, something they can relate to. We're going to increase the student engagement and motivation. And again, research in 2017 noted that the use of digital feedback from technology resulted in students' motivation to exercise and their levels of exercise increasing. And that's a positive. And if they're engaged, we're going to, I suppose, enhance the learning experience for them as well. The next thing, technology can lead to valid, accurate, and reliable data. So if you take, for example, a 10-meter sprint to test speed component of performance-related fitness, we possibly would use a stopwatch. And the stopwatch is going to very much dependent on the proficiency of the timekeeper and stopping at the right time. And there's going to be potential for significant error being brought into that measure. If we've error with the data that we're reporting, then it's very difficult for students to get an idea of where their weaknesses are, where the areas of improvement are, and them to be able to plan appropriate training programs or interventions for themselves. So technologies that can give us valid, accurate, reliable data are key. And I'll go back to this again in a while when I talk a little bit more about my experience with output sports. Why else should we use technology? Well, it's a topic within Strand 2 of the LCPE. And Strand 2, 8.1 states that the students will learn about the impact of technology in sport and physical activity. And look at what's here. Examine how developments of technology can impact on the performer. So, output sports, for example, is a cutting edge, brand new technology. How can that impact on the performer? Discuss technology, the use of technology in planning for optimum performance. Evaluate the role of technology analysis of training and evaluation of sporting performance. So there's some key learning outcomes within the Strand 2 that are totally related to technology. And for that, we should be including it, of course. What I have up there is 2 sample questions from the sample LCPE documentation of an exam paper. Discuss how technological developments can help an individual to optimize performance. Evaluate the suggestion that increase in use technology has made life easier for coaches. So again, it's touching on this area. Another reason is that technology can be used in the learning activities designed to address the learning outcomes from Strand 1 of the LCPE, in particular topic 2 and topic 4. And just to show you some of these, 2.5, assessment of health and performance related components of fitness. For example, the first learning outcome there is design a fitness testing battery for PA based on analysis of the particular fitness demands of the activity. So again, your procedures and protocols developed by technology such as output sports can help in this area. 2.6, use fitness test data to design a physical fitness program for selected physical activity. So the data generated from the procedures that you would use this technology in would be used here to address this learning outcome. And 4.4, planning for optimum performance, provide evidence on the effectiveness of the program design in achieving the performance goals. So when we track somebody's progress over time by using these technologies, it gives us information that allows us to reflect and then to assess whether our program was effective or not. So it helps with this learning outcome. And I'll touch on this in examples towards the end of the presentation. Why else use technology? This is to summarize some of that. So on the left here, we have the strand from the LCPE. We have different topics and whether a technology such as output sports can be used to help you in learning activities to address these learning outcomes. and the tick indicate yes, that is the case. So I mentioned 2.5, 2.6, 2.7 actually psychological preparation, discuss different types of feedback and their importance in selected practices. So the feedback that is derived from the technologies. It can be used in topic 4.2, 4.4, 5.2, physical activity participation, use different methods of collecting data about PA participation, and it can be helpful in this domain. And finally, of course, in topic 8.1. When we look at the 6 physical activity areas from the LCPE, technologies, and in particular output sports, can be used in a number of these physical activity areas. Firstly, it can be used, of course, with personal exercise and fitness. So this is really where we would use it the most. It can be used to assess somebody's health-related fitness profile and somebody's performance-related fitness profile. And it can be used to monitor somebody's progress, for example, in a weights program or a circuits program or a running program and so on. It can also be used within athletics because many of the functions, for example, in output sports are related to sprint assessment and jumping assessment. So there's potential there as well. And finally, it can be used within the games module because a number of different functions, for example, in output sports, are related to agility, balance, reaction time. And these functions will help you to assess the students' capabilities in components that are important for these games as well. So we can see where we could use technology, such as output sports, when we're teaching various physical activity areas within the LCPE. And finally, I wanted just to note as well, technology is really key as well to our physical activity profile, the PAP. When we look at the projects, the first aspect is that the learner, they'll analyze their performance in their selected activity. They will set 4 performance goals. They will implement ongoing training and practice, engage in ongoing reflection, at the end do a concluding analysis on their experience. So technology can help in order the identification of the 4 performance goals. And from the specification on the PAP, it will indicate that the performance goals come from numerous areas, such as performance-related fitness and health-related physical fitness. And technology, like output sports, can help in order the assessment of students' performance or health-related fitness. And from that, appropriate goals can be set in these areas. And we look at the last section of the PAP then as well, is around evidence of ongoing training, practice, and reflection. And this circled aspect provide evidence of implementing the program either as a performer or as a coach. The evidence should include 4 short pieces of ongoing reflection related to the performance goals. And by using technology as you're engaged in this training process, it gives you information and evidence that can be used to reflect on whether you've achieved your goals, whether your training and practice was appropriate or not, and helping this reflect the process. So it's very much tied into with this PAP as well, which is an essential element of the LCPE. Now, just to move on a little bit, I just want to talk briefly just around technology use and testing itself and how it can be used with regard to HRF and PRF testing. In this slide here, I have the category, whether it's our health-related or performance-related fitness components, and I've listed a number of different key components within those areas. And I've specifically focused on output sports and how it can be used to address some of these components. For example, muscular strength, there's a function to test your jump capabilities or to test barbell velocity testing, which is related to upper or lower body strength. Muscular endurance is a strength endurance function. Cardiorespiratory endurance is an ability to input a bleep test score, and all of this is stored up on a hub platform. There's flexibility, speed, agility, balance functions. For power, there's jump testing functions, and for reaction time, there's ground reaction time functions as well. So I'm just going to leave it there, and I know Dara is going to talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to highlight the usability of a system like this, give you this information. When we do any testing, regardless of what technology we use, it's about having precise and consistent measurement. And effective measurement depends on validity, reliability, objectivity, practicality, and sensitivity. So practicality, for example, is can I test 30 students within 120-minute time slot? And technology, especially user-friendly applied technology, allows us to do that. 2 really key things here is validity. Does it measure what it's supposed to? So if I take a piece of kit like output sports and I'm using it to test somebody's jump height, is the measure I'm getting back a true measure? Is it the real measure? Let's go back to our VO2 max example as well. I said a bleep test is a field-based version of a VO2 max. And a bleep test gives you an estimated VO2 max. And if that's a valid test, The estimate one will be very close to the real one if I went to the lab and tested it. So that's essentially, are we getting it? Is it a real measure that has been derived from these field-based applied technologies? And second one is reliability. Is a test repeatable? So if I test somebody's jump now and I test it 10 minutes later, am I going to get a similar score or not? Or is a lot of variability in the score? And if there is, it means there's a lot of error with our technologies. So we can say we can use technologies, but if those technologies have a lot of error built into them and they're not valid, they're not actually measuring what they're supposed to be, they're of no value to us. So that's why we need to look at technologies that give us accurate, valid, precise, reliable, consistent data back. I'm just going to briefly mention a study that I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, but this is a study that 2 of my master's students have completed, and it will soon be published in the International Journal of Sports Physiology and Performance. But in this, we compared different applied technologies to a gold standard measure of measuring jump height. Now, on the ground here, you have a force plate, okay? It's in a lab. This gives us the accurate gold standard measure of jump height. We got that information when they did the jump. We got information for this optimum I mentioned previously. We got information from the output capture, the output sports device here, and another IMU device known as a push device here. So these 3 field-based technologies gave us back the jump height. We got it from the ground as well, from the force plate, and that was a gold standard. And we looked to see how close all of these were to the gold standard measure. And what we found was that all 3 of these field-based devices give us reliable data, but only the optimum and the output capture possess validity regarding counter movement jump height assessment. And that's telling us that if I take a measure, for example, with output capture, with the output device, and I compare it to the measure I get from the force plate, they're very similar. And that's telling me that I'm getting some accurate data back, which is very important in order for students to be able to trust the data and make correct performance goals and be able to monitor their progress over time correctly. Just one other aspect around HRF, PRF assessment. It's very important we have appropriate use of testing at all times, and we just don't do testing at the start of the year and leave it at that. It has to have an educational basis. We have to use the data. But technology like output sports can facilitate goal setting when we see the results and then interpret those results. It can facilitate collection of accurate, valid, and reliable data. It can allow us to track student progress over time, and also can facilitate feedback, and again, from that, students' understanding of the components of fitness. So it sits in the appropriate use of testing. I'm going to mention some research from a UL colleague of mine, Brendan O'Keefe, from his PhD. And some of you may have engaged with Brendan on this, but Brendan surveyed teachers in a post-primary setting about the use of health-related physical fitness testing. And what he noted in his publication was that 95.3% of teachers used these tests. However, only 11.9% monitored students from years 1 to 6 throughout their school cycle. There was a significant decline in monitoring of HRPF testing from junior cycle to senior cycle. Only less than a third of teachers shared the results with the students' parents. And again, the most commonly cited reason for doing testing was educational benefits. So why I mentioned that is that some of the issues are, I suppose, items highlighted here by Brendan in the research can be addressed by the use of appropriate use of technology. So technology has the potential to assist teachers' pedagogical use of testing. It can assist with student-parent feedback. So for example, output sports, the information is stored up in a cloud. You can generate reports, share that with parents. It assists for efficiency and effectiveness with regard to testing. And the fact that everything is stored online can encourage you and allow you to track students' progress over time as well. And students will access the data easily so they can make inferences about the data with regard to their performance goals and their own self-directed program design. One last little bit I want to talk about now is I want to show you 2 examples of learning outcomes within the LCPE and how technology might assist in this area. So if we look at topic 2.5, and the learning outcome here, one of them is design a fitness test battery for physical activity based on analysis of particular fitness demands of the activity. Now, a potential learning activity here for students is that divide them into small groups to get them to select a sport. Students must then carry out a needs analysis to ascertain which components of fitness are most important for the selected sport. They will research it, decide upon the most appropriate means of testing, the most appropriate testing procedures, And then they will trial those, do them, reflect on them, refine them, and make sure they're related to the fitness components that are important for that PA. Where does technology come into play here? Well, students will research how technology such as output sports can test the key components of that physical activity. Consideration can be given to the accuracy, validity of data. Students can implement the testing battery using technology, and the test procedure is selected. To give you an example of this, if we have a PA which is athletics, which is sprinting, the key components here are speed, strength, power, flexibility, reaction. And technologies such as output sports have functions that can measure counter move and jump for power, speed for speed, ground reaction times for the reaction aspects, mobility testing for flexibility as well. So very much, technologies such as output sports can help you to develop the testing profile that can address or target the fitness components which are important for that PA. And such a process will help you to meet this learning outcome. It would also help you to address the learning outcomes related to example 8.1. And if we look at this, discuss the use of technology in planning for optimal performance. And the activity you've just done here can also be addressed by them discussing how they've used technology in this setting. And also the learning outcome, evaluate the role of technology in the analysis of training and evaluation of sporting performance. And clearly that's what we've done in this activity. So them to evaluate and reflect on what they've done and how technology has helped them here, helps you to attain this learning outcome. And if we are designing learning activities that will address 2, 3, 4 learning outcomes, all the better. And such a learning activity will do that around technology. The last example I want to show you is topic 2.6. We use a fitness test data to design a physical fitness program for selected physical activity. So that's that learning outcome. The activity here, again, they're in small groups. Each student is given a case study containing athlete and sport detail. They will be provided with fitness test data gathered from the athletes. Based on the data given, the students must design a physical fitness program for their athletes. Groups will present their findings, discuss them, justify them, and reflect on their findings based on the data. Where does technology come into play here? Well, various technologies, again, like output sports, use cloud storage data platforms to store all this data. So screenshots and reports can be run from these platforms, given to students so they have the authentic, real data in order to make this an authentic, rich, real-life learning activity. And they could use that data and those screenshots and those reports and interpret this data to make informed decisions around program design. Again, an example of this, say for example, the sport is a winger. You could have data provided on key components such as strength, agility, speed, cardiorespiratory endurance, and so on. And output sports technology, for example, their hub platform can be used to generate reports for the students, so it's an authentic experience. And from then they could use this data in order to interpret it, make judgments, design a fitness program, and then reflect on what they have engaged with. So again, just 2 examples of learning activities to address the learning outcomes and how you can intertwine technology use within those learning activities. Just finally, before I finish, I just want to make a little nod to how technology can be used in the other curricular areas within the PE landscape in Ireland. So technology, again, like output sports, can be used when teaching the short course in junior cycle PE. One of the key learning outcomes in Strand, one of that is that students should be able to evaluate their engagement and progress in a fitness program, providing evidence of progress made and identify ways they can further develop. So by using technology in order to assess their performance, gives them the evidence, they can assess their progress, and from that identify ways that they can develop. It can also play a central role in the classroom-based assessment for the LCPE short course around the personalized physical activity program. And secondly, technology again can be used when teaching the senior cycle PE and implementing the health-related physical activity curriculum model. And the focus of that model is developing the learner's understanding of HRPA for now and in the future. And again, by using technology, you're giving them the ability to interact with this technology throughout their life, to use this technology themselves to assess their fitness levels, to interpret the data and design their own performance goals and their own performance plans training plans based on the technology. So if you give them the skill of using such technology, it's more than likely that they will use that throughout their life and keep engaged in physical activity in the future. So finally, just to summarize some of this for you, technology can potentially result in precise, scientific, valid, and accurate data generation. And if you're use technologies that gives you valid and accurate data, it can assist in appropriate program design and assessment. And the students can interpret this data and design appropriately to meet their needs. Technology has the ability to make HRF and PRF testing efficient, effective, engaging, educational. So all these, they can be done in an efficient, effective manner. You can engage the students with use of technology, and it can be educational in that you're repeatedly doing the test, you're educating them on what the results mean, and you're showing them how progress has been made based on the intervention that they've designed themselves. And finally, there is a potential to use technology to assist in learning activities which are directly designed to meet the learning outcomes from the various PE curricula that exist within the Irish landscape at the moment. So thank you very much. That's all from me. I know Dara is going to give you a demonstration of the use of output in a moment, and then we'll hang on at the end for any questions that you may have.
So first of all, Tom, thanks so much for that. What would be, yeah, perfect, there you go. So just while I'm getting the technology ready, what I think this might be really nice is if you have any questions based on Tom's presentation there, or as you see the technology, just pop them into the chat, and what I'll do is then ask Tom those questions, and hopefully we'll be able to get you the solution to the same with it as well. So based on a lot of what Tom has shown you there and talked through, I'm going to show you the technology in action. So as I alluded at the start of the call, it consists of just a mobile phone app that you download, and then a wearable sensor that connects to that phone. So what I'm going to do is just share my phone screen here so that you'll be able to see both myself and the phone screen. So the first thing to flag with it as well is that the whole system is cloud-based. I think this is really useful, particularly in a school environment. The students can actually download the application themselves, have access to their own data and nobody else's data with it, but it'll also encourage that integration and interaction with their test scores beyond just the PE class as well, which might be quite interesting with it. And why that's useful is because all the data at the moment can be collected under different athlete profiles. So I'm collecting everything under my own athlete profile, but again, you can have multiple athlete profiles for each class, or and again, edited or filtered by maybe the sport they play or the year they are in. We do have a weight, height, and wellness tracking. We've especially seen schools wellness tracking being used quite efficiently in it around perceived readiness to train, physical well-being, psychological quality, and sleep quality, and the ability to track that longitudinally with it as well and see how somebody compares to their usual baseline standards. So my sleep is a little bit better, but my readiness is a little bit worse. But most of the system, and particularly for what Tom was alluding to there, with it relies on our objective markers of fitness with it as well. So as was kind of discussed there, one of our main differentiators is we test lots of different things within the system with it as well, across many different components of fitness. And that's why we've seen it being used in both a PE teaching environment, but also in a training and coaching environment for students as well with it. So balance, barbell velocity, ground contact times, jumps, mobility, hamstring strength, reactive strength, or a set of timing gates with speed agility functionality, stability, strength endurance, and strength testing in the system as well. I'm going to show you just 2 or 3 of these so you get a feel for how the system operates. There's, I say, over 160 different tests, I think, embedded in the system at the moment. So both of us will be glad that we're not going through each and every one of those tests. But to give you a feel for how maybe the system operates with a jump test. So this is a very commonly used test of lower limb power, probably done very often within the PE class. What I'm doing is going to just put the sensor on my foot. So you'll see a video there of the sensor being placed on the foot. So that's literally what I've just done there. Popped it onto my foot and then put it into place. And then literally all I need once it's on the right body location is just hit record and then do a jump. And then once I do land from the jump, I get my jump height given to me. So again, very similar than you may have seen on other pieces of apparatus that you may have used, such as a jump mat or something similar. Ideally, though, this is actually collected under my data, so I get that put into contextual knowledge. So that's 6% better than my usual jump height over the last short period of time with it. And I can actually see all of those previous jump heights. Once I click up here, I can see any of my previous jumps. So I must have been a little bit nervous, which gave me a little bit of extra adrenaline to get that boost. But I can also chart my jump heights over the month, the week, the day, or any custom range with it as well. And as Tom alluded to there, and particularly when I show you the hub, which is the desktop platform for this with it, All that data can really be easily integrated and looked for improvements and then used for reporting, generation, or demonstrating an improvement in the student. Again, when we talk about ease of usability of use with it, we have a quick swap athlete, and it's been a real focus of us as well, particularly as you can imagine when teams are trying to cycle through athletes really quickly and efficiently. That can be done very simply in the system with it as well by just going quick swap athlete or then moving about. And the sensor isn't tied to any one specific athlete, but can be moved around. I'll show you maybe one other feature with it as well that might be of use, our strength endurance and our chin up feature with it as well. So again, from a strength endurance perspective, what you might be looking to do is indicate if someone is doing repetitions of an exercise, such as a chin up test or a push up test or something like that with it as well. What this will allow you to do is to ensure that there's a standardization in the counting of those repetitions. So to give you a feel for it, I'm not going to do real chin ups. You'll all be very disappointed here, but basically what I can get is full range of motion on that. And maybe at times when I'm fatiguing, I can see that range of motion drop off with it as well. And when I finish, what I get is I set my target range at 100 degrees. If I didn't go past 100 degrees, it wasn't going to count as a repetition with it. So I can be flagged that I did 3 full repetitions and 3 repetitions that weren't indicative of past repetitions. And again, the standardization of that, I can imagine, might be very useful in the environment as well. Often you're probably similar to myself if you're testing individuals with it and they're shouting at you that I did a full repetition when perhaps this is indicating that it isn't. All of this data then flows seamlessly into our hub system. So I'll just share the screen here. Our hub system basically is a desktop platform. It's just a website you log into, and all the data syncs up immediately to that with it as well. What that allows you to do is create maybe physical performance markers or characteristics or cards, and then indicate if students are achieving what they want to in those. So you'll see some reds, greens, and ambers. And basically, they are thresholds that you set for individual groups if they are reaching their desired level. So it can be, based on 5% of their normal levels, then they'll show up green. If it's between 5 or 10%, they'll show up amber, or worse than 10%, they'll show up at red. And that's completely customizable as well. It allows you really, really quickly then to identify maybe students in need of attention. So one thing we've seen particularly in schools is maybe taking the wellness metrics, having that as a full bar, and then in need of attention, we'll look at the people who are trending downwards on that spectrum with it. Top performing does the inverse to the same with it. Another good functionality that we've seen within a school environment has been our leaderboards functionality with it. And this is particularly true actually on a teaching environment with it as well. So just to give you a feel, I might do another jump here, but this time I actually won't do the jump under my own profile. I'll do the jump under, let's say, Julian's profile with it as well. And what that will allow me to do, if I go quite like jump here and then move the sensor onto my foot, if you keep your eye on this leaderboard, just in this stage here, you'll see how it updates automatically within real time of me landing. So when I do a jump under Jules's profile with it, you'll see that jump has come through straight through on that leaderboard. And again, in a teaching environment, we've seen that work really, really well of keeping students engaged, not that they just do their jump and then they move away and kind of just talk and maybe don't engage in the rest of the lesson. What this helps to do is create a sense of competition in the environment with it and create a bit of crack when everyone's trying to get better scores. All of those leaderboards can, of course, be filtered. That you have, different leaderboards for different groups of students, whether it be based on age or sex or sport or anything like that. And then the other thing that you can do within the system as well, which we see in schools really use to great effect, is the report generation functionality of the system. So you can create report at athlete or group levels. All athletes, excuse me, can be grouped in, as I said, depending on age or sport or whatever you feel is most appropriate, or at an athlete level. And you can then save reports as templates and then reuse them so that they're very easy to communicate information, I guess, to students or to caregivers or whoever it is. So this is a report template that we use pretty consistently in here. And basically what it'll allow you to do is I've asked it to do a couple of key performance indicators for me, such as my jumps, my mobility or range of motion, line chart, etc. with it. And what it'll allow me to do really quickly then is share that information. So what I'm going to do is just drag it across to this screen. So I'll just drag it over here. And basically you can see that down there. You can see really quickly how that is individualized to the student. It can be individualized to your school. I just use this logo here as a kind of catch-all, but that could be the school crest or whoever is appropriate to use. I've asked it to chart out some of my readiness statuses, some of my key performance indicators, both my latest, my best, and my averages. So you can see those for my balance, my mobility, for my jump heights, etc. I've asked it to chart my jump heights over a period of time, and then some barbell velocity data as well that we see being used, particularly in our sporting teams, where they'll look at barbell speed and quantify that as a way of training athletes with it. But basically, you can get an idea here that this report can obviously be generated very simply and used as a communication tool between teachers and students and caregivers with it, and also can be used as a mechanism of report generation for in school assignments as well, where they maybe use this graph and then take it and pop it in. So with that, I'll just briefly touch on these, a couple of quick things before we go through the Q&A. So Tom mentioned our validity and reliability, our website, outputsports.com. Up at the top, you'll see validity and reliability through here as well. And you can go and look at that. We're really excited to add Tom's study to this. And once it gets published, you can see there are a number of different studies added to it as well. But actually really key in this process, I think might be really useful, is up on the top as well, you'll see user experiences. And what our user experiences talks about is a number of our different users at all levels, so our pro sport levels with it, but actually in our universities and schools levels as well. With it, so Tom was nice enough to do us a user story around the same about his use of the system we discussed there, but also there's a number of different schools as well that will be pretty similar, I guess, to environments that you may be working in that might be interesting to read through with it. And then the other thing that you can always do as well is contact us. So this tab up here will allow you to just pop in any of your details with it as well, and always kind of happy to hop on a quick call and talk through the system in more detail if there's anything that you've seen that you want a bit more clarification on beyond the same with it. Finally, there is a join output page here with it as well. So it's outputsports.com /join-output with it, where you can see that the price of the system with it as well. And then with the code, this will be sent through to you with an email following this as well. With the code LCPE, you can embed that in with it until midnight on next Sunday, and you'll get 10% off the first payment of any subscription to the system with it as well. So I know that's a lot to take in with it, but happy obviously to answer any questions now. And we'll start with some of the questions maybe that we've got through in the chat there. So I might stop sharing the screen, and then hopefully it'll be about myself and Tom highlighted, and we can start to answer maybe some of the questions coming through. Perfect. Oh yes, so somebody has downloaded the app on the phone, but it's not given the option to create an account. So once basically you have signed up to the system with it as well, we will give you access to the system with it. So you have the ability to download it on an Android device, but we then need to authorize that account is good to go with it as well. So you actually need to sign up to the system to have access to the app with it as well. There is no someone's question here, the minimum age for an athlete account with it. There is no minimum age for an athlete account. You can embed the system and create accounts for athletes at all ages with it. And then what they can do is then they can download their own app with it as well. We don't have any of the data in an unanonymized fashion with it as well. So there should be no problem with that. Will a PowerPoint be sent out? We'll have access to this recording with it. Tom is nodding at me there, which means the PowerPoint will be sent out with it. And actually, just interestingly on that with it, we'll also send through a PowerPoint that outlines use of the output system in different elements of the PE curriculum, as Tom's kind of alluded to there with it, and actually the different tests you can do that relate to them. Can it be used on all Android devices? Any Android device running Android, I think it's 7.0 or later, just let me double check here. Generally speaking, yeah, Android 7.0 or later with it. Generally speaking, that's any Android device in the past rough 3 to 5 years will be able to use the system with it as well. The euro symbol and the question mark, which I think means how much does it cost? As I say, the join output web page there with it as well. should give you a good indication of the same with it as well, and a good feel for the same. And as I said, there is that 10% off discount with it. And should you wish to hop on a call to discuss it any further, you can do. Any individual scores related to any normative data, it's a great question with it, and it's actually an area that really interests us with it as well. So we do actually provide that to a lot of individuals who are looking for, jump heights in related to kind of normative values across multiple different spectrums with it. What we're actually very interested in is a lot of those normative data points are based on cohorts of hundreds of different athletes. They dissipated across many different sports and many different age groups, etc. But this is actually we're really excited that what we're building is a large database of comparable scores across multiple sports and age groups with it as well. So what we're actually embedding in initially, as you've seen there, it's related to an individual and how they're performing next to themselves. But longer term, really useful to compare that to normative data that we initially can just provide to you, but longer term we can have it individualized to output users with it as well. Can it record a golf swing? It actually it can be used to do something similar in terms of giving you would have seen me do the range of motion metric, and you would have seen an angular velocity metric part of that. That's basically kind of tempo of movement is a nice quick way to kind of loop that with it as well. We have had users who've used some of our maybe rotational tests in order to get that type of information and then show improvements around it. We actually haven't collected data on golf swings. It's just a lot of the movements that we have embedded in it, such as med ball, throw, or toss, are very similar to golf swings with it. But we have had users who've used it for something similar to that. It definitely can't make you better at golf. That's the one thing I'll promise. That takes a lot more work. You'll have to get in the gym and use that data to improve your golf swing with it. But we'll go on. Fergalance is a cross-platform, so iOS, Android, and Microsoft. So at present, it is Android only. We will be iOS. We're moving towards and actually building that version of the system at the moment with it. We expect it to be ready to go at the start of next year, which we're really excited about. So it won't be Microsoft compatible, but will be iOS compatible at the start of next year. But interestingly, what we've had in a lot of environments is that people may be using the Android device for maybe data collection in a PE environment with it, and then maybe reviewing their scores on their own phones, which may be iOS or Android. And the ability to actually review the score on your own phone on an iOS version is actually coming ahead of the ability to capture the data on that. So long story short, the ability to capture data will be at the start of next year. The ability to review data on an iOS phone will likely be before that with it. What is the cost for implementing this for a class of 24 students with it? I guess it'll depend, and Kevin, happy to hop on a kind of call and talk through the same, but it'll depend on the number of sensors and the number of athlete profiles that are required, I guess, to implement that successfully with it as well. And we can talk through solutions that we've seen work well. So there's not a single, I guess, answer for that. Perfect. Any questions for myself or Tom then beyond that? Great. So I think with that, because we've run a little bit over time as well, first and foremost, I'd like to really thank Tom again for giving up his time to talk through how to implement the system within the Leaving Cert PE curriculum and beyond with it, which is obviously really exciting for us with it. We obviously are available to talk about any individual requirements with it and hop on a call and discuss the same. And we'll follow up again with an email, both with the recording, how to implement the system a little bit further with it as well, and that discount code as well. And from that, as I say, if any other questions come to mind, feel free to send through any questions that you have, or happy to hop on a call again. Great. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for